years ago, and all those records were there, and the knowledge of who that individual was known and not distributed. So there's no be on the lookout for. There was no knowledge given to the neighbors, and Brandi was waved on in with her daughter in the car. She went home, went about her day, back door was left open, and the murderer came, saw the door open, shot this 9-year-old child. As she ran to her mother, said, "Mommy, Mommy, I've been shot." Her mother cradled her in her arms, and then he started shooting again, striking Brandi in the arm and striking little Tiana one more time. Brandi frantically was calling her husband, who was at the dentist's office down the street. He got there before the paramedics arrived. He cradled his daughter, rushed with her to the paramedic unit, and she passed away. It didn't have to happen. It shouldn't have happened. The policies of the Orange County Sheriff's Office should not have allowed this to have happened, and hence we brought our lawsuit. And to add insult to injury, to aggravate the situation, you all were called out on the case. On the first one, Nathacha, nobody knew about Tiana's shooting at that time. So Channel 13 and News 13 truck was atop the very spot where Nathacha was killed earlier in the day, and you all didn't even know about it. One of your senior video photographer people was aware of the fact that this could be dangerous. He had the experience. And so he said, "We're getting out of here." And you all know who that is. And so one of the trucks left because he just had a sense of danger, because he'd been around a long time. Dylan, on the other hand, 24 years old, was assigned to the case. You all covered the lawsuit that we brought a couple weeks ago. And so then Dylan was simply in the vehicle along with his videographer, and then the murderer came out, shot the videographer, and a fatal shot was given to Dylan as he was apparently in the vehicle prepping for a story, couldn't hear what was going on with his earplugs in or his headset on. And if in fact a bolo, a be on the lookout for, had been put out for the murderer, if in fact all the proper precautions had been made, then his life could have been spared potentially as well. That's our case. So my partners and I are here to answer any questions for you all, but that's basically a summary. It's been brought out. We filed this in federal court. It speaks for itself. I simply tracked the allegations essentially that are in the complaint. But this is preventable. And the community, the Pine Hills community and the Central Florida community deserves to be protected. And by and large, the Orange County Sheriff's Office does that. In this particular instance, they failed. And compensation should be paid to the families of the victims because these were all preventable, shouldn't have happened, and it could have been prevented if, in fact, the same treatment was given to those in Pine Hills as is given in other areas of Central Florida, and if, in fact, just simple policies of letting people know that there's a killer on the loose in your neighborhood could have prevented all this. So, thank you, and we'll open ourselves up for questions.
Mark, what other kind of information do you think the Sheriff's Office should have put out in those hours after Nathacha's murder that would have alerted people to what to be watching out for?
I'm going to let one of them answer.
Yeah, the killer had a very distinct look about him. He had, what were they called, wicks?
Called wicks.
In his hair. He had all black. There was, I guess, mug shots that
He was
were
readily identifiable.
Yeah.
He had wicks, which for those who don't know, if you have dreads and you put them up, you got wicks. And so he was dressed in all black. He had flaps on, the shoes, and significantly he'd been arrested 13 or 4 times previous. And they had spoken to his relative earlier in the day, so they knew who he was, and they did not put it on an alert. And so, but for even independent of the identity of the individual, if they didn't know the identity of the individual, they should have still said, "There's a murderer on the loose in your neighborhood." And they didn't do that.
Well, and where Nathacha was killed, it only took 4 hours and 4 minutes for that scene to go from her killing to being washed as if nothing had ever occurred. And as Mark has stated, the Spectrum News 13 van literally was on the same spot. And all of these precautions, all of these notices, all of there's somebody on the loose is so important because at 3:21 p.m., according to the records of the sheriff's office, they cleared the scene. And we know during that time period, within 27 minutes, the murderer is within Brandi Turner's house. I mean, it's just a matter of moments in the same geographical area. So on top of just waving Brandi to go home, had the residents known, then they could have at least taken their own precautions. It's a situation where crime has become acceptable to the 66,000 people of Pine Hills, and that's wrong. And we all need to protect all of our communities, regardless of what percentage of color or wealth or affluence that they have.
And do we think that they didn't release the specific information about Keith Moses because they feared, and in general, that if they put something out like that specifically, that they could face a lawsuit from someone if they misidentify somebody?
We see it all the time. You all cover it all the time. This person's a suspect. Anybody who has any information about this individual, we request that they contact the sheriff's office. So this should have been treated as so many other cases that you all have covered and that we've seen in our lifetimes on the news.
Especially in a situation where Nathacha's homicide happened inside a vehicle. This was not a general suspect. The eyewitness to that murder was mere feet from where she passed away and the murderer committed that first crime. So identity was not an issue here at all.
In fact, it was the killer, I don't use his name, it was the killer's relative who was in the very car when the killer was in the back seat and Nathacha was in the front seat, that he simply, we understand it about a minute and a half later, put a bullet in the back of her head for no reason. Innocent woman.
Mark, the Orange County Sheriff's Office just put out a statement. I'd like to read it to you and get your response. They said Keith Moses is the only person responsible for the heinous acts of violence that took the lives of 3 of our residents and gravely injured 2 others. We grieve those losses along with our community. The claims against the Orange County Sheriff's Office are unfounded, and we'll be asking a judge to dismiss this case.
It's an expected response. And once again, we proceed because it's the right thing to do. It's one thing when a law enforcement community makes a decision to act in a certain way. In this particular instance, she was waved in, but for the act of the deputy who was following policies, saying it's all done, it was sanitized. That whole area was sanitized. You could go there and you could eat off the street. It was cleaned up so much. Nobody knew that there had been a murder there if you came in after the fact. And so we're distressed. We expect better. That a 9-year-old little girl was killed because the sheriff's office waved a mother in with her daughter and didn't tell them that there was a murderer on the loose and had been on the loose and had killed somebody earlier. That's just decency. That's common sense. That's what law enforcement is supposed to do, to serve and to protect. How do you protect somebody when there's a murderer on the loose and you wave them in and don't tell them that there's a murderer on the loose and your daughter, your 9-year-old daughter is killed? I don't get it. So they want to fight it in court? Here we are. But just do the right thing. Change your policies. Make it better. Protect the citizens that you're sworn to protect. You do a great job with most things. You screwed up on this one. Own it. Fix it. The residents of Pine Hills are not worth any less than the residents of Windermere. They're not worth any less than the residents of Winter Park or anywhere else in Orange County. They should be given the same degree of dignity and the same degree of protection and the same degree of respect as everybody else. And because this was sloughed off, this child is dead, Dylan is dead, and we have to find ourselves here today. Just do the right thing and take care of these families the way they deserve to. Modify your policies and move forward in a positive way.
When you say modify the policy, do you mean a blanket policy on notification after something like this? What does that look like?
I'll let you go.
these policies, first of all, are already in place. So this is a situation of what's in place needs to be equally applied. Everybody deserves the same equal protection of law. What does this mean to how we could be better and how the sheriff's office could be better? That is through standard notarization. That is getting the word out in all of these instances when you have a known homicide suspect who is not apprehended. The public deserves knowledge. That's what they look to all you to as you report, but they also look to their government officials and law enforcement to know of the danger, which was multiplied in this situation when Brandi Turner was told, go home, all is well. And something to point out is that was at approximately 2 o'clock, although the sheriff's office didn't officially clear the scene till 3:21. So the sheriff's office is already letting people back into the neighborhood as if it is business as normal on Hialeah Street that day.
And that was Brandi Majors.
Yeah, Brandi Majors, yes. And that's wrong.
And she specifically asked if everything was okay. So the fact that she got an all good is another issue.
There's also a line in the lawsuit that talks about, staffing levels in Windermere compared to Pine Hills. Is that something that you guys requested internally? Where's that coming from? And what are the discrepancies that you're pointing out there?
We're still investigating that, but upon information that we've received, that's accurate. We don't have too much more info to provide here, but we will in time.
Yeah, it's the statement from the Orange County Sheriff's Office is sad. It's distressing. Yes, the person who pulled the trigger is the murderer. But the question to ask very simply is, could lives have been saved if notice had been given by the sheriff's office? So to defer and to deflect by saying the only person responsible is the person who pulled the trigger for the criminal charge, absolutely. For the civil, though, which was preventable and avoidable, that's a different issue. And the mere fact that the sheriff's office comments avoid that, I think, speaks volumes. Why did they wave a family in when they knew there was a murderer on the loose? I ask every single citizen and homeowner and parent in Orange County, if you ask a law enforcement officer, is everything okay? And they go, it's all okay, go on home. And you find out there's a murderer hanging out in your neighborhood who just killed somebody. Do you think that's the right way to be handling things? Ask yourselves, if that happened to you and there was a murderer who had killed your neighbor, who had killed somebody just yards away and was wandering around, and when you asked, what's up, they said, don't worry about it. Would you just shrug your shoulders and go away? Or would you call us and say, this isn't justice. This isn't right. Fix it. A child is dead. A young man is dead. Those are not little things. So you want to file a motion to dismiss? Whoop-de-doo. Do it. Whether we win or we lose, it's out to the public right now. We expect to win. But either way, this is wrong. So don't hide behind your law books. Don't hide behind your motion to dismiss. Do the right thing, damn it. 2 people are dead that could not, who didn't have to die. Just do the right thing. That's it.
I think you said you guys had talked to some of the lead detectives on the case. Did they have any explanation for why more information wasn't put out in those early stages?
Yes.
You elaborate?
No. They basically, Pine Hills, so much happens in Pine Hills that they can't handle everything. Well, whether that's true or not, it's irrelevant to this circumstance. They could have easily told a mother that a murder was on the loose when her daughter was in the car. They could have easily notified the surrounding neighbors. Doesn't take a lot of resources. Law enforcement was already out there, as they should be. They started the job, but they didn't finish it.
Well, and one of the things that it speaks to on a wider level that we address in the lawsuit is this, it's almost a policy of complacency in that these things are going to happen. This is a normalized, everyday occurrence for the citizens of Pine Hills. There are 66,000 people who live in Pine Hills that are some of the best and brightest members of our community. And crime is acceptable nowhere. So in a situation like this, we do believe that there is the demonstration of acceptance, that these things are going to happen and that the citizens of Pine Hills are just going to have to deal with it. Although if this were another neighborhood that Mark lives in or I would live in, then everybody would know as soon as it happened. And that's just wrong. That doesn't protect the community, it only harms it.
And I'd like to speak about Ryan. Before Ryan entered into the civil practice for the last several years, Ryan, how many homicide cases did you prosecute?
About 140.
And how many homicide cases did you go to trial on?
About 40.
So we know what we're talking about. We have vast experience in this area. I've done this a long time. This shouldn't have happened. And it was preventable, and the citizens of Orange County deserve better. Rather than hiding behind, well, we're going to file a motion to dismiss. Just do the right thing. Take care of these families. Adjust your policies. Own your stuff. You know, you know, we hear law enforcement often say that those who commit crimes should suffer the consequences of their actions. Well, why should a different standard be applied to them? The consequences of their actions is they waved an innocent mother and child in to death's door, into harm's way. And as a result, because of the lack of notification, we have a couple of dead individuals, we believe. Any other questions? Thank you all, as always. And we're available to, if anybody has questions or follow-ups or needs to fill in the blanks, we're happy to accommodate, of course. Oh, yeah, I'm just seeing what's happening here. You say Brandi Turner, but it was Brandi because he's, yeah. There is one little discrepancy, if I could. It's just for your own purpose. Brandi Majors is the wife of and the mother of Tiana and the wife of Tokyo, but she also goes by the name Turner. So when he said Turner, I just, you know, respectfully, you may want to just use Majors throughout, just so you got consistency, so there's no confusion. But I didn't want to correct it there, but that's the reason for it. So they're interspersed. So, but Tiana was Tiana Majors, and it probably makes it easier to say Brandi Majors rather than flipping into Turner, just for your own accuracy purposes. All right, everybody, thank you all.